listening to the Motherhood Experience, a podcast where you are part of the conversation with moms, for moms, and by moms. Let's jump into this episode with me, your host, Val Kleppen. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Motherhood Experience podcast. You can probably tell here in my voice, I'm dealing with a little bit of a sinus deal. I think everybody around is dealing with something, either influenza, sinus bug, stomach bug, all of the above. We're on the tail end of it, but it's still very much there. Today's guest is someone I have never met before, but I'm thrilled to introduce you to. We met for the first time tonight, spoke for the first time today. Her name is Kailyn Conway, and she is a mutual friend of previous guests Tracy and Holli. By the way, thank you for introducing me to your friends, Tracy. And also, if you have friends who should be on the Motherhood Experience podcast, be sure to email me, info@themotherhoodexperience.com. Always willing and able to meet new mom friends and have them as a guest. Tonight was no exception. Here is my conversation with Kailyn. Well, I am thrilled to meet and to introduce you to a new friend. I actually don't know you, Kailyn, but I'm excited to have you on the podcast today. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I am Kailyn, and we have a mutual friend, but no, you and I have never connected, so kind of fun. Thanks for, this is my first podcast too. Did I tell you that? Should I have not told you that?
Well, I would say this is a pretty fun and gentle one to be broken in on. So I appreciate you trusting me with being your first podcast. Why don't you tell the listeners the ages and ages of your kids and what stage of motherhood you're in?
Yeah, so we have 4. My oldest is a boy. He is 11. And then we had Mara, and she is 8. And then we always joke that we were bamboozled. And then we have twin 5-year-olds, Margaret and Eleanor. They're girls. So a boy and then 3 girls to follow. So you never know what you're going to get.
Okay, now so our mutual friend is Holli, and yep. You kind of made the joke. So Holli had surprise twins, her 3rd pregnancy, and lo and behold, Kailyn, you did as well.
Yes, and Holli and I have been friends, so her middle and my oldest are about the same age. And so we were working together. We were both on site 5 days a week, pregnant, having babies, having all these side conversations, sharing a pumping room. We got to know each other really well because we had to coordinate those schedules, of course. And so our husbands got to know each other. We had the kids together. And quite literally, their last name, did she share her last name? I feel like she did.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I don't want to say her last name if I'm not supposed to, or if she didn't want that shared. But so our joke always was that when we were trying for a 3rd, that we didn't want to pull a Bromanchenko. And that literally is what my husband would call it whenever we talked about it. And sure enough, we pulled a Bromanchenko, and we had not a 3rd, but a 3rd and a 4th. So, and we're of course thrilled about it. We wouldn't change a thing. But it's just funny how you're like, be careful what you wish for. You might just get it. It's kind of what we always say, right? We talked about it enough and it happened.
So hilarious. And so also, I think it's interesting. Your oldest is a boy and he's your only boy. What's the dynamic where your oldest is your only son?
Yeah, it is interesting. So in our family, there's a lot of boys. So my husband has a lot of cousins. I want to say, gosh, there's maybe 30 or 40 of them. I lose count. And there's only a handful of girls, though. And he only has a brother. I only have a brother. We only have nephews. So we thought for sure we'd always have boys. Like that was just our thing. So we found out that Mara was a girl, and we're the kind of family that always finds out. We want to know. The control freak in me needs to know. And we actually lied to our families and said it was another boy. So we were showing them the ultrasounds. We were like, it's a boy. Both of our families were like, oh man, we thought this was going to be the girl. And then we didn't wait long. It was in the same dinner or whatever. And they were like, oh, joke's on you. It is actually a girl. So it was fun to kind of surprise them with that too. And then lo and behold, then when we ended up having the twin girls, it was like, okay, now the mold has officially been broken. So our family is no longer just boys by any means. So Liam has lots of boys around him.
Well, that's good. So the dynamic isn't entirely foreign then for boys if that's all that your extended family is.
Right.
That's good. So are the girls fraternal or identical twins?
They are fraternal. We always joke they just happen to ride together. So they look very different. One is blonde, one is brunette, very different personalities, very different people too. So it's interesting because my husband's a teacher. I don't know if I shared that with you or not. And so he feels very strongly that when they go to kindergarten next year, that we'll separate them in two different classrooms. Because like one of his things is he's like, people always refer to twins as like the Conway twins or the twins. And he's like, we don't, they're separate people. They're Margaret and they're Eleanor. So we'll see how that goes. We've heard a lot of families with twins that say they separated them and then joined them back up later. So maybe we'll give them the choice someday. But kindergarten, we're going to split them. So stay tuned.
That- I definitely will, Kailyn. I definitely will.
I'm just as curious as
So-
you are how that's going to go.
So tell me, was motherhood always a desire of yours? Did you always want to be a mom?
I think so. I mean, our family still, all of us, like my core family growing up, we always were baby people. Like I know anytime like my mom and I would fight over holding the baby. Even my brother and I have the dynamic where if we have a mutual friend who had a baby, like he'll text me if he gets there first. Like I got to hold the baby first. Or so that instinct I feel like was always there to be like, I'm not uncomfortable around people with babies. Played a lot of house. I feel like that was a thing when we were growing up, a lot of dolls around. It's funny to watch my girls do the same thing. And then I think just Chris and I always knew we'd want to have kids. And we always kind of had 3 in our mind, except I don't know that I ever like officially shared this with him, but I don't even think that our house would have felt full with 3. Like I'm very grateful that it rounded out the numbers at 4 too. So just interesting how I was like, I feel like I would have pushed for a 4th if it didn't actually happen. We'll never know now, but here we are.
Oh goodness. So are there any is there family names or any significance to the names you chose for your kids? Or were they just names you liked?
A couple of them, I mean, there was kind of, I feel like Liam and Mara we did a lot of like digging into family names. And again, going in, we thought we would have more boys. So we're like, oh, we won't use that one yet, was kind of like our thought on that because we for sure wanted to name somebody after our dads. Like we had all these conversations, but we truly thought we were going to have another boy eventually. So happy to have Liam, and Liam is Liam Christopher after my husband, who's Christopher. And then Mara, kind of a funny joke. Again, this happened at the same workplace where Holli and I worked. But there's a man there who I absolutely love. His name's John, and he's a jokester. And he's an Irish guy, and we're an Irish family. So he was telling me all his sisters' names one day late in my pregnancy. And I swore he said his sister name was Mara. And I will take this to my deathbed that he said Mara. So I come home and I tell Chris that I'm like, I have the perfect Irish name. It's John's sister's name. Like, this will be perfect. Well, I have the baby, Mara, and I'm telling John that, like, oh my gosh, we stole your sister's name. And he's like, my sister's name is Mora. What are you talking about? So I thought we were like, had this crazy Irish name, and Mara is still an Irish name, but we totally pronounce it different. So just kind of funny with that. Like, and John's still, like, we're still in contact, and he still kind of chuckles about that too. He's like, remember when you thought you were naming your baby after my sister? That was an accident. And then Margaret and Eleanor. I have so many. I'm like, which kid now? Which name? So Margaret was my grandma's name, and she is Margaret Catherine after St. Catherine. We always, I had some pregnancy losses in between, one in between Liam and Mara, and then 2 in between the twins. And so that was always a saint that we leaned on kind of when all that tragedy was happening, and kind of trying to figure out, like, is this meant to be? What's happening with that? And it's my dad's mom is Margaret. And then Eleanor is Eleanor Mary. And Mary is in both Chris and I's families. My mom's middle name is Mary. And Eleanor, we just liked it. We spell it a little different, Elinor. So it's there's actually a Jane Austen book with the name Eleanor spelled that way. And so my husband found it, and we wanted to spell it that way. But we went in with the twins with 3 names. I can't even remember the third right now, which tells us we made the right choice. But my doctor, I had a C-section with them, and my doctor came up to me. Chris was with the girls. They were perfectly healthy, but we were just in separate rooms. And he was like, what'd you name them? Like, what? And I was like, I don't know. Like Chris is in charge of that because I was so done being pregnant. Like I just wanted them out and didn't care what they were named. Like I liked all three. So the joke is kind of that Chris always names our babies because I'm always just at the point where I'm like, I'm decision fatigue. It's your turn. So it's kind of how we wound up with
It's
that.
a real thing.
It
I
is.
don't think decision fatigue ever goes away. Like after the very first time you experience it, I think it just becomes a part of you.
Like, and I hate to say that I don't care, like, but at that point, that would have flew out of my mouth. I didn't care. I was like, they're here, they're healthy, name them, whatever the heck you want. Like, we're good. You knew I had my opinion. I feel like $1,000,000 now. So catch me while I'm hot, right?
So, so were your pregnancies fairly easygoing? Did you have complications or?
No, we've been really lucky in that department. My babies don't like to come out. That is one thing that Liam was our longest. I was induced at 42 weeks for him. So hence the
Oh wow.
dribble wanting to be done aspect of that. And then same with Mara. I think for her, she was 41 and I wasn't ever really sick or anything like that. Just the same, like the regular uncomfortable things. And even with the girls, I absolutely loved my OB. He was fabulous, but he was so calm. And I don't even think I had an extra ultrasound with him. Like I had the regular early one, 20 weeks. And then right before, like he was just like, your body kind of did this on its own. It's meant to do this. Like if I think something's up, I'll help you. But right now, like we're not gonna, he just didn't do anything extra that made us nervous or worried and I think a week before my scheduled C-section, I'm probably getting the timing wrong, but it doesn't really matter. I had an appointment and I was like, how about today? Like, how about we just scrub up, get him out? Like, I'm ready. I'm good. And he had a concert that night. He wouldn't do it. But we just had like really easy going rapport, which I feel like helped because it does kind of ease you're like, yeah, I can do this. It's fine. Like I'm uncomfortable and I would like this to be over, but which sounds terrible, but it wasn't like I hated being pregnant.
Right.
It just was by the end, I would get just kind of done. Like you're not sleeping, you're getting up all the time. Like I can still like even thinking back, I feel like I have like PTSD of like that pain in your hips. It's such a real thing that you don't feel otherwise. So I'm grateful.
It's
I was
true.
never really out of sick.
Sciatica for me was
Yeah, it's real. And and I would always get super stuffy too when I was pregnant. I don't know what the deal is with that, but immediately would go away upon delivery. So it was always a happy experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that it was all good. You would never know. Some women love being pregnant. Some are miserable being pregnant, but it's always a chore and an adventure either way to bring new life into the world.
Exactly.
But I think what I'm hearing is to not. Was this at the school that you worked with Holli's, or was it somewhere else?
No, it was before that. So we were both in the insurance world together. So we were in an office every day. I was in the health insurance side of things, and then she was over on the P&C side. So doing something very different than what she's doing now. So even preschool for her. I know. It's interesting, isn't it? How just
okay. Well, clearly there was something going on either in the building or the water or something to where you guys both had fraternal twins your third pregnancy.
Fraternal full term, yeah, with very very minimal interventions and things like that. Very, very blessed in that area.
Were your twins as big as her twins were?
No, I don't
Over
think
7 pounds each.
Has been no. Hers were. I mean, they were so healthy. Ours were. I mean, they were both over 5 for us, which we were so happy with. But then when you compare them to like her boys, it's like, oh my gosh, how did she do that? I don't know. And we met her boys in the hospital. It was funny. I think I was pregnant with Mara, and we happened to have a free night, which is unheard of, right? Like now thinking back, I'm like, what do you mean I had a free night? What were we doing? Because we're chasing kids around all the time now. But we must have had a babysitter or something. And our date night was to go visit Holli and the babies in the hospital. So I have a picture of me being so excited holding both of them. And I feel like that picture is the reason that we got Roman Schinkel. myself right there. Like that picture, now we look back at it every once in a while, her and I'll send it back and forth to each other. Just like, remember this? Feels like a lifetime ago though, all the same. But yeah, so we were able to go and see them, which was so fun and just so cool.
Oh, so sweet. A sweet story, especially that you had twins after that. So are you working now? Are you a working mom now?
I am, yes. I feel like times have changed so much since then, just with the how all the changes in the world happened, right? With all the pandemic and things like that. But no, so when all of my kids, when they were little, I was working 5 days a week outside of the home. And just thinking back to that, it's like amazing how we all like got dressed, got out the door, got people where they needed to be. Like I still am confused at how all of that happened and we were able to do that. Because looking back now, I don't think I could do it right now. Um, it's crazy. I'm like, how did I get 4 kids dressed and ready and out the door and manage to somehow still like work? It's
Yeah.
crazy to me. But so now I work for a digital health company and I'm home 5 days a week. Our whole company is remote. So I rarely have to, I mean, every once in a while to go see clients or to meet up with my team a few times a year, but I'm able to get my kids on the bus. They come home from school off the bus. Margaret Eleanor's daycare is a mile down the road. They were sick all last week and it's like we didn't even have a hiccup because it was just I was able to be here and help them and kind of go back and forth. And it is, well, COVID I know had so many detrimental things, there's some really positive things that came out of it for our family for sure. Just having them home has been so nice, and having me home, it's just you feel like you can parent a little
Yeah.
differently when you have that space.
You're not wrong, and I don't think that you're alone in that either. Like as bad as COVID was for as many people, it held a lot of blessing for as many or more. I mean, our family included. So I don't think you're alone in that. But
And I will
I
say,
want to ask you. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say it caused us to think a little differently too. An interesting thing. So when we had 4, so while we had them all at daycare at one point in time, we quickly realized that this isn't sustainable. So we did have an au pair for a year or two, which people are usually very fascinated by. She lived with us. She was from Germany, so she was the one getting the kids on and off the bus for a while too. And so she did go home during COVID. Completely understand why her parents were like, we don't know what's happening in the world, time to come home. So I
Yeah.
think that really was kind of what resonated with us. We realized how helpful it was to, I mean, have that extra set of hands here
Yeah.
in the house. So
That's
that just kind of
yeah.
changed our priorities for sure.
And that's so I'm going to circle back to what I was going to ask you, but I just want to add a comment. I just came off of another interview where we were talking about the importance of setting aside pride and being able to ask for help and really recognizing that you even need it to begin
Right.
with. So I'm actually really glad that you shared that because a lot of the times people are like, "Oh, it must be nice." Well, honestly, if you just ask for help once in a while.
Right. I think someone told me, and it might have been when the girls were little, that people like as much as you want to like you want the help, people want to give it more. And I think I'm guilty of
Mm,
that too, where you just want to feel needed, you want to feel like you're doing something. So give people the opportunity to help. And I feel like that changed our mindset with that too, because we had such an awesome village when the girls were little. I mean, there would be times that I'd be nursing one on the couch. I'd see a friend walk through our doors unlocked and walk in and pop something in the oven and be like, there's dinner here. I'm not staying. Kiss the babies. I'm out of here. And just without like there was no expectations, right? Like, didn't care what the house looked like, didn't care what status we were in, came in, provided dinner, and then left. And we were so grateful for those people. I mean, they're still our great friends now. And we live in a town of 5,000 and we couldn't survive without people helping us with pickups, drop offs, sports carpools. My Margaret right now is on a shopping trip with her godmother who just lives down the road. Like it's just the village here is so supportive. And our kids are always like, we're never going to move. Right. And we're like, we sure hope not. We don't plan to.
oh, that's sweet. That's sweet. So what I was going to ask you, you talked about working remotely, working from home. Do you I also work from home and I don't experience this so much anymore because I think that I've worked from home long enough to where my friends and my circles kind of they get it that I work from home. But do you have people like, you just work from home, you know?
Oh yeah. I
You
mean,
can come hang out here or do this lunch here or just do whatever because you just work at home. Do you get that?
a lot. Yeah, I feel like not so much. I feel like our friends circle understands it, but sometimes my parents are funny. I love them so much, but like my dad will call me midday and just want to talk for 45 minutes. And some days I can, right? Like I'm like, oh, I have a break. I'm taking the dog for a walk or I'm doing stuff anyway. But then other days he's like, well, you didn't call me back. I'm like, well, because I'm working. Like I still have meetings. I still have, and he means well, of course, right?
Mhm.
It's not, but it's a concept that he got up and went to work every day. And then when he was home, he was home. So I think it also kind of sometimes bothers some people too, that there are nights where I'll be checking email or pinging people or on the rarity up chatting with coworkers to get something out the door. But that's the balance because maybe the day before I left at 3 because the kids had something, or maybe so it's that flexibility that works really well. And we've had to create those boundaries and kind of figure out what works and what nights we aren't going to be doing that, what nights we are. But yeah, it's always funny, kind of the, well, what are you doing all day anyway? What, you're always typing stuff? Yes, I am. Whole world of
It
paperwork.
is an interesting, right. It's an interesting dynamic that technology has brought into the world too, because, and not just from with working from home either, but being able to connect with or contact people at any time
Right.
of the day, wherever they are,
Yeah,
has
and that's
really
a
changed the game.
it's hard too because there are times where like no, we're on vacation or we're like where's the line there? And I personally I struggle with that and shutting down because if someone pings me needing something, and you do sometimes have to ask yourself like, is this really needed or can they wait till the morning? A lot of people that I work with are in different time zones too, so it's like my day might be done but other people's days aren't, so where's the balance there too, because you want to make sure that they have what they need to finish their task too. So there are lots of conversations we have in our house though as well, where Chris will maybe pull out his complete,
Yeah.
as teachers do, and I'm like, oh, are we working tonight? Because if you are, then I don't feel bad, but if we're like, gotta wait for him to do it first kind of thing, right? It's, I'm
I
sure,
so get that. I so get that. Yeah.
right?
So you mentioned family vacations. What are family vacations like for you with 4 kids?
Yeah, we have, so my kids play a lot of sports. And so finding that time where we're not busy has been really important to me, and kind of a like a dynamic that we're trying to create with our kids too, that like shutting down and walking away and really not having the stress of all of that is really important. So we for a long time we didn't do much, truthfully, because it was so much work just to like even the thought of packing up and getting people out the door was overwhelming. But we did always keep, there is a cabin, um it is in Wilmer, Minnesota, or near Wilmer, Minnesota, and it's the cutest resort. There's 12 cabins. It's a couple that runs it. It's, we joke that it's kind of like Neverland where everything stays the same. Like it's the same 13 cabins, the same families rent the same week we go. And I think this will be our, my gosh, it was just Liam and Mara. So this is at least our 6th or 7th year going. People joke that it sounds like Dirty Dancing, like where everybody meets up in the summer, and that's exactly what it is. But it's easy for us to just pack up, drive a mile and a half down the road. We get our same cabin every year, so we know where all of our, this is your room, this is where your stuff goes. And then we have our village there too, because there's all of our friends, all of the people we haven't seen in a year. Some have come and visit us in between. So we have families from Iowa that, for I think the last 2 years, spring break, they've come and stayed with us for a couple nights. So it is just this like weird extended family dynamic that we have, but there's no TVs there. There's no internet. The cabins are very minimalist, and it is exactly what we need, because all you do is step outside, go to the beach, go out on the boat, go ride the bikes, whatever it is, and it's perfect for us. And that's honestly, if you were to ask my kids, they all say like that's our favorite week. And it's so simple. We didn't have to pay for an expensive flight somewhere. We didn't have to go do anything extravagant. It's just kind of time with people that you can expect and rely on and have fun being with. So that's our big week out typically.
And that is a much better answer than I was expecting. I think I don't know what I was expecting. I think I was expecting like a big trip, a far distance. But how you explain it, that sounds so dreamy to me. And there's something that you have mentioned a couple times now. So I kind of like to unpack it with you. You kind of talked about community, friends, just showing up, filling in the gaps when needed, and your village. I think you've mentioned that phrase a couple of times. So what does it look like for you as a mom of 4 kids? What are your relationships like with other moms? Because are these women that you've known forever? Are people moving in, moving out? You live in a small town. Is it hard to get to know friends? What does that look like for you?
It's an interesting question. I feel like I have a couple long-term friends that from like high school and things like that are in that realm, but maybe at an arm's length, just because we don't live so close anymore. So it is one of those things that maybe you're Snapchatting back and forth when you have time and catching up when you can. And does this Saturday actually work for you? Like how are we going to meet up? But here, I don't really know how it all happened, but a lot of our friends are very close to us here, and we moved here 7 years ago now. We were in a suburb closer to the cities, and then we just moved out a little more west. So we're not far from where we used to live by any means, but that 20-25 minutes can make a big difference in just kind of how slow paced, how fast paced. Like, you have to really think like, okay, Target's 20 minutes away. Do I really need to go there? Or can it wait? So I mean, it is. It's like one of those things where you do have to think a little more. I know you're chuckling because it's way probably further for you than that too, right? For us, 20 minutes is far.
I think the nearest Target is 3 hours away from me, but yeah. So I'm like groceries. Like we've got to drive 25 minutes for groceries. Like that's a big deal.
And it is, right? And it does make you think a little differently. But I think here you're kind of thrown into situations like, so our oldest, he was involved in hockey, and so we kept running into this family every Saturday and Sunday at hockey. And then we were like new parishioners at church, so we were like it pictured in the bulletin or something. And so that mom at hockey, she's like, I feel like something's telling me to come say hi to you, because we've had 3 weird incidents now where like we keep crossing paths. I don't know what it is. And we were pretty fast friends after that. Like, she's now Margaret's godmother, and that's who Margaret's with tonight. And I think she helped introduce us to a lot of people too. She's from here. And a lot of people, it seems like when they're from here, they kind of stick around a little bit. So my husband's in the kitchen. He just said T-ball. So my husband coaches a lot. And I think that helps meet people though too, because you're always there. Everybody knows who Coach Chris is, right? Like that. So that alone, and just being forced to sit on the sidelines with people, you do start to realize, hey, do you want me to like just swing in and pick them up? Because I'm already driving by. And just kind of starting those little friendships has helped a ton. And I think just we're pretty real with each other. Like, if someone's having a hard time, hard week, they'll let you know, and you kind of know where to pick up carry a little more of the load, right? So if someone's husband's traveling, I feel like a lot of us know about it. So we know to reach out and ask, like, does he need a ride? Do you need a ride? Do you want to co-parent this weekend? Like, we know he's gone.
Yeah.
So things like that, I feel like have just naturally come. And I don't know the rhyme or the reason or why it was easy, but it didn't ever feel like we were new people here at all. And it's strange, but we definitely are very lucky in that realm.
I think that's fantastic. And I love the guest appearance by your husband shouting from the kitchen as well. But do you think that there are, hi, Chris, by the way, do you think that there are cases or instances or people who, like at the T-ball events or other team events, sporting events, whatever, who don't like they're going to these events, they're participating by showing up in these things, but not participating in the community of it, whether they're shy or just feel like they have too much going on or whatever. Do you see that ever?
I mean, I think there's always there's always a couple people where you're like, okay, they are purposely sitting further away and want their space, or especially during like Chris still did a lot of coaching outside during COVID. So it was like you could tell where people's comfort levels were with interacting or mixing in with people, right? And so I think I have that, but I do a lot, not a lot. I don't do a lot of personality tests, but like I've taken a lot of like where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are, and it's every single time I take
Sure.
them, it always comes out that like galvanizing is one of like my higher ranked or whatever. So I don't know, it's like that's apparently a natural ability of mine, which I don't know if I totally believe that, but I do feel like I always want to be inclusive and make sure that those people feel like just because you're not in our best friend circle right now, like doesn't mean that you are not like a part of this. Like you can still come. Like we don't have these weird inside jokes. I feel like that's so high school, right? To have all these like smaller, these are my friends, these are, we can't expand. And I think that the mindset of the people that I'm with too are the same way, that it just works. And they're just kind people who want to be inclusive and care for others. And if there is someone who feels that way, I would hope that it's not because of something that I did or we're doing, that they still feel like they can reach out one-on-one or whatever that might look like too. Because it can be really hard moving into a new space and feeling like everyone already knows everyone or the kids are already friends. And we really do try to make sure that we're checking in with those people and making sure that they know that like it's not some secret meeting we're having, just walk on over. Like we all want to work this, be together, and we all are forced fun, so let's make the most of it.
Well, I think that's fantastic. And do you feel like it's just something that you were born with, maybe, to be able to approach people and bring them in like that? Or is it a skill set that you've kind of learned and developed over time? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it comes pretty natural. I think my both my parents are extroverts too, so I think that that helps. My husband would probably joke that like my dad couldn't walk into an establishment in St. Paul and not find someone that he was like related to or knew. My mom was always volunteering for things, always around school, around just being a part of things. So I think that that was kind of like the culture of our family too, was to be chatting outside with the neighbors. And that's kind of very similar to how we are now, that when you step outside here, if the neighbors are outside, plan on being there for a while, because you're going to catch up on all the things like you didn't even know you needed to catch up on. So I do think that it is something that comes easily to me, and I don't know, sometimes I wonder like how I can foster that differently too. Like, am I using it enough? Am I being too strong on people? What does that look like? So I don't know, something to think about, that's for sure.
I would just say, just to encourage you, like, if people are, I don't know, if people are kind of born with it, shall we say? I just want to sing the Maybelline commercial now, though.
Yeah.
That you'll have a good read on people. You'll be able to know if it's too much or too little. The fact is that you're making the attempt, and I think that's what's appreciated most of all. Maybe not the level of the attempt, unless you're running up to someone and just getting right in their face and hugging them like, I don't know you, but I'm a hugger. Which, I
Yeah, I
mean, I
probably
get
have
it.
said that
I
before.
definitely have done that.
I know, right? You say that, and I'm like, oh crap. I don't think the first meeting, although I had shared with you that I work remote and my boss is also remote. And so we did meet up for the first time. I don't know if it was like 6 months into my job, but I felt like I knew him pretty well, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, like, big hotel we were staying at, and there had multiple elevators. So he and I, unbeknownst to me, were both riding up in separate elevators, and the doors opened, and I totally went in for the hug upon first meeting. And he is not. Now we'll come to find out, I've worked with him for 2 years now. He's not a hugger. Like, I totally was too much at that point in time. And he always jokes because I bring it up constantly, like I do. And he's like, "You were not too much. Stop. It was fine." Like, I know it wasn't fine. Just admit it. It's okay.
I think also, to a degree, there are people who are too much in general, but then there are like exceptions because of their personality. Like, they get a little more wiggle room because you can appreciate the authenticity of who they are, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. I'm going to pretend like that's what he thinks
Yeah.
too.
So what about motherhood brings you the most joy these days? Where's your cup getting filled in your motherhood journey lately?
Yeah, I mean, we've had it's funny because sometimes when the kids are sick, like you're like, oh, what is happening? But it like kind of opens up this opportunity for one-on-one time too. So my middle one, Mara, her and I don't get a ton of one-on-one time together, but she was home all last week. And it was funny just kind of how you find those little pockets of time to, right. Like she's watching the Babysitters Club right now. So we sat down and watched an episode of that. And we have like this journal that like I got for her. And I always thought this is going to be great. We're going to pass it back and forth. It's going to be this thing. And it's like, it's sat on my nightstand for like 3 weeks now. So we picked that back up and kind of started that because we had more time in the day. So that was a nice way to just kind of, as bummed as we were that she was sick, like selfishly, it was so nice to just hang out with just her. And then I did something super rare for us for Liam's birthday this year. So he was learning about Ellis Island and then 9/11 in school. And he like begged our family to go on a spring break trip to New York City so he could go see it. And we are not dragging 5-year-olds through New York City. Chris has no desire to ever go to New York City. So like this was never happening, like never. But he was like very adamant and was getting all these books from the library and telling us all these things. And so Chris and I had a conversation. I was like, well, I've never been to New York City. What do you think about like me just going with Liam? Like, what do you think for like a long weekend? And sure enough, like the stars aligned. He had a weekend with no hockey. I ended up having some points for travel. We found a hotel that was near Times Square. Like the stars aligned. And so he and I just this year in February went to New York for 3 nights and did all the things. And anytime he asked for something, the answer was usually yes, which does not happen in our family. Like he got dessert for dinner every night, which is not something we do either when we're going out to eat. And so I feel like that also kind of now established like, okay, do we see the value in doing things one-on-one? So how can we implement that now a little bit differently? And I mean, I don't think it's always going to be this big extravagant trip to New York by any means, but it was fun to just spend time with just him, right? Like, and do what he wanted to do. And we weren't moving slow by any means because we were rushing around trying to get all the things done, but it was like stopping in and having coffee and just hanging out for a little bit. So it's been fun to kind of acknowledge the fact that like we like hanging out with you now at the ages that you're at. And not to say we didn't when they were little, but they just bring so much different conversations and their own opinions. And it's been fun to kind of watch that happen.
Right. I love that. I love that so much. It sounds to me like kind of top of the list for you and your household is community, core memories, and just cherishing that time and different experiences, but also adapted to each one's likes and uniqueness and individuality.
And that's what we hope.
I love that so much.
True, right? Like that's what we hope they're taking away. And I don't know, some days we're more conscious than others. Don't get me wrong. Like there are plenty of times where things are not going as planned or the best laid plans don't happen, but we're sure trying.
Well, Kailyn, this has been an absolute thrill to get to know you, to get to meet you. A big shout out to Tracy who sent us the introduction email, and a shout out to Holli for introducing you to Tracy to begin with all those years ago. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Motherhood Experience. I really enjoyed it.
Yes, thank you for having me. Now you're a part of the village. Look out.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of the Motherhood Experience podcast. To join our exclusive TME community, head on over to themotherhoodexperience.com/learn more. Be sure to follow the Motherhood Experience on Facebook and Instagram, and please leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, leave us a comment below, and we'll catch you next time.